is such a pleasure to be able to have this conversation with the artist Tuli Mekondjo, who, together with the galleries Hales and Guns and Rain, has offered this, to me at least, astonishing and sacred and profound exhibition as part of St. James's Piccadilly's Side Chapel art exhibition series. And so, Tuli, it's over to you, first of all, of course. And if you'd like to introduce yourself and to take this conversation in any direction you like, to be able to share with people a little bit about your background, who you are, and your art.
Hi everyone, thank you Ella for the intro. My name is Tuli Mekondjo. I'm a visual artist that is based in Windhoek, Namibia. And with my work, I deal a lot with, I call it trauma laboring, whereby I'm stepping a lot into the archives and I get to really have a conversation, not only a conversation, but a look at the archives and to better understand the traumas of my people, my ancestors, and also to better understand the colonial gaze and how we are depicted within the archives, and also to look at how the archives is such a problematic and traumatic space, and also how do we deal with this space, these archives that is filled with a lot of trauma and the violence within the archives itself, because they photograph us in so many with all kinds of different backgrounds in so many settings. But today we live, in the world in Windhoek, but we are still struggling with even accessing some of these archival images in institutions like, let's say, in Europe or in the Americas, because due to copyright issues. So it's like nobody really asked permission to take pictures of us during colonial times, but now that we really want to deeply engage with these images, they still, they still barriers to actually access these images, because someone in some institution or someone in the West owns the copyright, and we constantly have to ask for permission to have access to look at ourselves within these archives, within these violent spaces, so my work is dealing with the archives on so many levels.
I with that focus on trauma and labor and history and consent in mind as well, like the non-consensual, who has permission, who has power in what ways. I wonder about, if you'd like to share something about, like, let's say your personal journey in relation to becoming an artist, and also what your experiences might be in art projects and in the research and the work you do, as well as personally, if you wish, with religion. So, like, how did the art start to take shape and form, and where is religion for you in all of this?
Well, I think I want to start with saying that I was born in a refugee camp in Angola. Both my parents were very young. They were teenagers, and they crossed the border into Angola to fight the war, to liberate Namibia so that we can gain independence in 1990. So I was born in one of the SWAPO refugee camps, specifically the one in Angola, and it's in Kwanzaa-Sul, and I spent most of my formative years in another refugee camp in Zambia, because, of course, my mother also wanted to pursue an education. And I remember when I was a young girl, still growing up in the Nyango refugee camp, I remember there was a time when she also had to leave the camp to to come to the UK to study, to gain an education so that she can become a teacher. And when Namibia gained independence in 1990, I came to Namibia with my mother. And I would say that one of the most I don't know how to call this moment. One of the most intense moment in my life was the first time I met my grandmother in our village. And I remember as a young girl, I just ran across this mahangu field, and I went to embrace this old lady without knowing who she was, without knowing that she was my grandmother. And one of the most fascinating things that I observed were her hands. And because in the refugee camps when I was a girl, I've never seen an old person, and I've never seen old hands. So of course, my grandmother's hands were so fascinating to me that I spent, I don't even know how long, like I kept touching them, and I kept feeling her, and I kept connect. I guess that was even the moment when I really, really, really connected with my grandmother. And it's only years later I realized that that was also a moment where I connected to my ancestors through my grandmother, because there was a moment where everything around me, when I was touching her hands, they were so old and weathered. There were deep lines, and it's only years later I remember now that my grandmother's hands were telling a story. They were telling the history of our ancestors, of my family, where I come from, and the burdens and the pains and the loss. And I remember I remember looking at her hands and thinking that her hands, the stories that they were telling, they were telling the stories of birthing, the many children that my grandmother gave birth to. In fact, in total, she had 9 children, including my mother. And most of her children died. They passed on during the war. And and I remember thinking, like, how sad it is that even though I was born in a refugee camp, but a lot of my aunties and uncles died within Namibia, within the borders of Namibia, and I never got to meet them. I always think that there's a gap within my family, because there's all these relatives that I've never met. They are related to me. I don't know how they look like. Sometimes the very few, one aunt and one uncle that are left now, sometimes they speak about these, my other aunties and uncles that I've never met. They say their names, but I don't know how they look like. I don't know. I have no connection really. Well, maybe in this realm, but I feel like perhaps in the spiritual realms, we are actually more connected. And of course, going back to my grandmother's hands, I remember, like just thinking of the birthing, like that her hands were responsible for the birthing of these children, and also the burial of her own children, including my mother, the fact that she also have to bury her children. And of course, then it also translates to the laboring in the mahangu field when she used to, use the hoes and plow the land and spread the seed, the mahangu seed, and waiting for the harvest and to harvest and to process the mahangu to flour so that we can have, food to nourish us. So of course, and I think it was this moment really that kind of, I think it was this moment where I connected not only to my grandmother, but to all my other ancestors. And I always like to say that for me, every season we grow the mahangu in our mahangu field. It is always a return of the ancestors. It's like when they sprout and they are growing, and we harvest them. It's like, I feel like it's the field. It's like the ancestors are there, but in the form of the mahangu, and then we take a bit of it, we harvest it, and then we store a bit of it for the next season. And of course, my grandmother also gifted me the gift of respecting plants, and I always never knew where it came from, because before my mother died in 94, at our house, we also had a lot of plants. You know, my mother was also, she loved plants, and we always planted our own food. We never bought tomatoes, you know, we always get it from our garden. And of course, it's only years later I also realized that my grandmother had a beautiful gift of what we call in Oshuambo appeasing lightning, which means she was given the gift of going into the wilderness and harvesting leaves, plants, roots, certain herbs, and she was able to go to a certain space. Usually in the homestead, if there's an area where the lightning is always striking, and you always have to call someone that is knowledgeable, that got this knowledge system, traditional knowledge system, to appease lightning. So of course, my grandmother was the granny that everybody called. It doesn't matter if it's in a different northern part of Namibia, in a different village, they would always call my grandmother, and she would do her ritual, and she will appease the lightning. And I know a lot of people always ask, where did you study art? What is your education? And of course, I always say I am self-taught, and I am really, really, really self-taught, very much coming from a background where everything that I know is very much through doing experiment, and just figuring stuff out. But I think my creative gifts really comes from my grandmother, and all my other ancestors that were incredibly gifted, because of course, as Awambo people, before the missionaries came into our lives, we took everything from nature, everything that we wore, the traditional attire, the ostrich eggshell beads, the shells, everything that we wear from head to toe was taken from nature. We utilized what we could get from nature. And of course, there were incredibly talented craftsmen and women that could take a piece of ivory and turn it into a beautiful jewelry piece. So of course, as much as people want to know where did I get my education, I would say that my education is very much from life. It's from life experiences. It's from my grandmother. It's from being born in a refugee camp in a space that was also quite filled with violence and a lot of deaths around. Our parents fighting in these trenches, while at the same time they were trying to raise us and to make sure that we have as much as they could, a normal upbringing in the refugee camps. And of course, it was very difficult growing up in a camp, but there was also a sense of family and community. And I remember when my mother came to the UK to study, all the other mothers, all these mothers in the camp all these other women became my mothers. They took me in. I could go to anybody's kitchen and they would feed me and they would take care of me, because they knew that my mother was not there. And of course, it was every woman's duty in the camp to look after the children that were left behind, because sometimes your mother is gone to study, or sometimes they have died in combat. And of course, the mothers would take us in and they will look after us. So yes, of course, when we talk about religion, I like to tell the story that, of course, in the in the 1870s, some Finnish missionaries came to northern part of Namibia, and they indoctrinate us. They we were indoctrinated to become to convert to Christianity. And of course, in this process, we were forced to not only get rid of our true essence as Awambo people, but to get rid of our names, even our traditional names. It became incredibly fashionable to have a Finnish name, for example. If you are named Vilho or Taimi, then it's very fashionable because it's or Rautanen or whatever, one of the Finnish missionaries, because it became so fashionable to associate yourself, your being and your essence to the, I guess, to the missionaries. And of course, what the missionaries did, they started saying that our traditional attire, our beautiful traditional attire that was made from cow hides and the ostrich eggshell beads, that was inspired by by nature, they started calling it as pagan clothes. It's like pagan clothing. Even the traditional attires was demonized because apparently we had to get rid of who we are, to cut off our traditional hairstyles that were so important to us, because for us, Awambo people, our traditional attires would tell of our standing, of our position in our communities. If we were small children, if you are just a small little girl, if you are going through puberty, if you are a married woman. So our hairstyles were so important to us, because then you can see at which stage are you in your life. And of course, the missionaries decided that we need to get rid of the hairstyles, because they wanted us to look like, yeah, to look the same, basically. Everybody had to be bold. They even came up with a very strange, I don't know, where they just told everybody that there's a lice situation going on, and that everybody needs to cut off their hair because of the lice situation that was going on. But the crazy thing is that they didn't cut off their hair. They kept their locks, but of course I guess the lice only decided to be in our hairs and not in their hairs. So that I found that very quite oof quite traumatic, because when I look at these images in the archives, especially of us Awambo people with all these bald heads, there were moments where I could not really make out who were the women and who were the men. I could only see a sea of baldness, of just human beings, of people with bald heads, but I could not distinguish who was who. Is it a man? Is it a woman? Until I looked like really close, and then I could see the cotton dresses that the women were forced to wear, because of course the missionaries, they also told the women, or they told the people, to get rid of everything that they are, and then they introduced the cotton cloth that was imported from Finland. And I think there was also a time in northern Namibia where they wanted to grow cotton, so that they can make their own cotton fabric, so that the people, especially the women, were taught to use the sewing machine, and so that they can start making their own cotton dresses, because it became so fashionable to look like the missionaries. And of course, there were also moments in our history in northern part of Namibia where our chiefs, even our chief, like Chief Kambode, I think one of the chiefs is sitting with the hat. That's one of our chief, Kambode. And some of our chiefs, some were against Christianity, of course, the conversion to Christianity, and some were pushing for our traditional customs, so that we can keep going through the Efundula, or the coming of age ceremony. But of course, we also had some chiefs and kings that that were supporting the missionaries, and they were even encouraging their subjects to convert to Christianity because it became so fashionable. If your name is not Maria, if your name is not Taimi or Laimi, then even your own people would call you as a heathen, or they would call you as a pagan. In fact, in Oshuambo, we even say over ompani, which means you are a pagan if you don't have, if back then, if you don't even have a Christianized name. So of course, and this is why today, in northern part of Namibia, a lot of us do have a Christian name and a traditional name. And unfortunately, the Christian names became our first names, and our traditional names became our second name because of this indoctrination. And yeah, in colonial Ovambo, it was also important for, I don't know, like especially the women, the young women were forced to come to the mission stations, and what they were even being taught to relearn the skills of, let's say, basket weaving and clay pot making, like pottery, which is also quite crazy, because I mean, as Awambo people, we grow up with this knowledge system. You don't have to come to a mission station to learn how to make a basket, but these were also, I guess, as part of the indoctrination, to have young women at the mission stations and to kind of reteach them how to weave a basket, which is also crazy. And of course, also to learn how to use the sewing machine, and also reading and to translate the Bible from Finnish and to Oshuambo or to Oshikwanyama and Oshindonga. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's what happened to us. And of course, today in northern part of Namibia, we literally mix the two. Like, we go to church. A lot of people go to church on Sunday, but we also do consult our traditional healers. We go to the hospital, but we also still have the knowledge to go to a traditional healer, especially if you have a kind of an ailment that cannot be healed by any doctor, and it only requires a specific ritual that only a traditional healer knows how to perform, then you have to go and see a traditional healer. So it's really a mixture of the two. Even though we say we are Christianized, people still have that traditional knowledge system. They still have a connection to their ancestral belief systems. And I find it beautiful that we, as much as we've been indoctrinated, we still follow some of our belief systems. Like, for example, if you have a baby, there's a naming ceremony and the smearing of the red ochre for the baby and the mother, and of course, we still give our livestock ancestral names. This is still belief systems because we believe that some of our ancestors, their spirit reside within the livestock. And of course, there are ritual practices and customs that we follow when you are getting married, or before you are getting married, or if you are introducing your future husband or wife. What is it that you need to do? These traditional systems are still there. And of course, but there's also a large group of people that are still very much scared of doing things the traditional way, because then they are completely indoctrinated, and they don't even want to think about the idea of ancestors, because they believe that I would say that they will even tell you that they have disassociate themselves, or they have uproot, what is it, where they decided that they don't even want to associate themselves with their clan's totem. Like, for example, my clan's totem, it's beautiful because it's called the people of the grass, and I think this is why my grandmother is connected to plants. It's we are called the Ovakwanaidi, which means the people of the grass, which is also a very rare totem because it's in the Shwambo. Most of the totems are like animals, like the people of the cows or the people of the lions, but mine is so rare because it's connected to a plant, which is grass. So some people don't want to have that connection to their totems, the clan's totem, because they will tell you that they are completely Christianized. They've been indoctrinated so much that they only believe in Jesus Christ. And of course, and of course, I sometimes like to tell them the story of how I'm not converted, and they freak out because they are like, what do you mean you are not converted? Because when you die, where are you going to be buried? Because of the indoctrination again, you have to be baptized, you need to be converted, and you need to be registered with a certain church so that on the day when you pass and you need to be buried, they need to find you in a certain book, and then they can decide where you need to be buried. So of course, I always reply like, as we say in Oshwambo, it is not the corpse or the dead body that will feel ashamed. It is the people that will, the relatives or the people of the relatives of the corpse that will feel ashamed. So I'm only going to be there as a body, I guess, but my spirit will be somewhere else. So I am not worried about the fact that I'm not in some book somewhere and I need to be, I need to be converted or to be, to go through this process of confirmation so that I'm, to secure a spot in a cemetery or something like that. So, and whenever I tell the people this story, they sometimes want to have a big heart attack because it's so rare, because they expect you to say, oh yeah, no, I went through confirmation school, and, everything is prepared and set, but yeah. So yeah, that's my my religious belief, I guess. I prefer to listen more to the ancestral voice, and to really, especially also with my work, what I'm doing as my work as an artist, and also when I do this performative work, I'm really going through this process of channeling and just, listening to the ancestors, and what is it that I need to do when I'm in this, when I step into this other space where I need to, sometimes I look at an image and then I really feel the pain, I feel the trauma, and somehow I have to do a performance where I'm channeling this trauma and this soul, and I try to understand what is it that they're going through. And it's very challenging. Also, it's a very intense space to be at, but also a very, very important space to step in, especially for us in Namibia, whereby we fear very much the ancestral realms. We don't like to talk about it. It's almost like we want to erase our ancestors, and just think that the only thing that's important is God or Jesus Christ. But in fact, if it's not for our ancestors, some of us will not be here, especially us that are orphans, that are left here by our parents, to figure out life on our own. I always say that if it's not the presence of my ancestors, I wouldn't be here today, because, they have revealed themselves in so many ways, like they've been present, they showcase themselves in interesting ways. Sometimes, you'd be like, oh, okay. I understand what's going on. So,
Yeah.
and the question is always, what do you do when you have that gift? You know, do you suppress it? Because we also know in our traditional belief systems, we also know if you don't embrace what is being shown to you, you can go crazy, as in like really mentally unstable, because it's a gift. Sometimes it's a gift that you really need to listen to, and you need to take up space for that and to say, I'm ready to go through the initiation. I'm ready to go through this process of listening to my ancestors. So if sometimes in our communities there are people who simply went crazy because of the ancestors revealed themselves to them, but they couldn't really deal with that energy, so with that space, and it's with what they saw, and it becomes so intense to a point where people go mad, and this is why it's important for us to listen, and to, if we need to really go through this process of initiation and to become a healer, and to go to the initiation school and to become a healer and to be able to connect properly and to go to the right people, it's important for us to also pay attention to that. And I'm not saying that people should not convert to Christianity, and I'm not saying that people should not have that connection to God or Jesus Christ. In fact, some people do it that way. You know, they believe in their traditional belief system, and they also believe in God, and that's also fine. But I just don't believe in this idea that it should only be like you must only believe in God and that's it, or you must only do I don't know, traditional belief system, and that's it, or whatever it is. Um, it's up to you to fight to decide what exactly, what is your extreme side. Do you want to be, yeah,
I often think of this,
100%? Yeah.
yeah, I often think
Mm.
of this as a kind of a constellation of
Mhm.
possibilities for histories of family and identity and land. Uh, Rather than a kind of A to B where it's like, is it all
Mhm.
over here? Is it all over there? Because
Yeah.
there's so many layers to it. Or it's a
Yes.
bit like, if you have a pool of water and there are different colors or different ingredients that are being dropped into it. And that can create a completely different kind of atmosphere with all of its possibilities as well as all of its. I mean, I was so struck by what you were saying about the kind of inner chaos that comes from
Mhm.
refusal to listen,
Yeah.
a refusal to um, acknowledge almost like the love as well as the pain of
Mhm.
where each person has come from, and that every person in these photographs that you've put together and
Mhm.
assembled to tell so many different stories, those who knew one another and those who did not, across many different kinds of years, different kinds of choices or non-consensual involuntary experiences that
Yes.
people were
Mhm.
having. It strikes me so deeply that in the midst of this, you described your family as being people of the grass, because that
Yes.
makes me think so deeply
Mhm.
about the little tender green shoot, about the
Yes.
cycles of nature,
Mhm.
and about land and the need for rich, deep soil in order for people through history like your grandmother to scatter the seed, to nurture, to work with
Mhm.
their hands. And that makes me think about three things because of
Mhm.
the way that you've chosen. And I can't tell you how grateful I am, how grateful and glad St. James's is that you
Mhm.
have chosen to create this work and to place it within this sacred Christian British space.
Mhm.
It's an astonishing gift. It truly is. And so this idea of land and plants, it makes me think
Mhm.
about wheat and the bread in communion. It makes me think about grapes and the wine in communion, and this Christian connection that's made between,
Mm.
in this tradition, the love
Yeah.
of God the sacrificial body of
Yes.
Jesus as a person of color, as like not a white guy, right? Like Jesus was
Mm.
not Finnish. He
Mhm.
was not. And so there's something to me about the deep questions about the relationship between nature and symbol and different kinds of nourishment, and not being
Yes.
able to control that, that it's free, it's
Mm.
open, and that
Mm.
scares people too, where they go,
Yeah.
what is this? The mystery of this. It also
Mm.
makes me think about textiles, because you work
Yes.
so intensively with many different types of textiles in different ways. And those too, unless they are synthetic, unless they're
Mhm.
industrial and chemical
Mhm.
and plastics, that
Mhm.
these textiles, they also come from the earth. And that for you and your histories in Namibia,
Mhm.
those textiles, like the planting of cotton, because of the expectations around clothing, that's been part of the pattern of exploitation as well. That weaving baskets from roots or from
Roots.
these
Mhm.
products of nature,
Mhm.
you don't have to go to the Christian space to reimagine or to relearn or to remix something which is already present. And so it makes
Mhm.
me think about what you've done here and this work in this church in London, and being people of the grass, drawing the histories of nature as well as these images of people in the hair, in the clothing, in the women and the children, and many different types of experiences. Just those cycles of nature keep coming into my mind for this. What do you think?
Mhm. For us, I just want to share with you like how we used to be in communion with our ancestors with the mahangu porridge. So before the indoctrination, we used to, everybody eats together, with our hands. And we have to take a piece of mahangu, porridge made from mahangu, and you have to throw four pieces in four direction, the north, south, you have to in every direction. And you have to say, of course, in my mother tongue, it's like Kwateni obakwa Mungu vako ushiro, kwateni obakwa Mungu, which means literally translate to take the ancestors or spirits or um, uh, spirit can also be a mwengu, which also trace, yeah, can also mean, I guess, yeah, the spirits. So you have to throw it and say, take those spirits of the east, of the west. So you are actually giving a small offering of mahangu to the ancestors that are all present in the four directions. And then, of course, you have to say also, thank you for the harvest. Thank you uh, for a good harvest of the mahangu field. Thank you for healthy children. Thank you for the livestock. And of course, in pre-colonial Ovambo, our ancestors, my grandparents or my great-great-grandfathers would be buried in the kraal or the enclosure where they would keep the livestock. And of course, the idea is that even in death, grandfather is still looking after his wealth, is still looking after his livestock. And whenever we have ceremonies of ceremonies where you have to honor the ancestor of ceremonies of harvest, our grandmothers will take a calabash of traditional beer and pour it in the kraal, in the enclosure, and pour it and say, take though, grandfather, thank you for your blessing. Thank you for giving us a good harvest. So before anybody else could drink, they have to go to the kraal and pour a little bit or give this as an offering to the grandparents. And of course, unfortunately, when the Christian or the Finnish missionaries came, they told us your coming of age ceremonies when your girls are going through these stages of becoming women to learn on how to take care of children, how to pound mahangu, how to nourish the body, how to harvest, and how to, I don't know, take care of the soil of the land. The missionaries were like, no, we don't want you to carry on with this belief system, these rituals of initiation, because it's barbaric, it's paganism, and they didn't like the idea of the fact that the girls during this ceremony, there's a window where the girls were allowed, the young girls were allowed to pretend to be men. And what this meant was that the girls will cover themselves. And I think this is why when I do my performances, I put ash on my face as a protective layer, because I'm stepping into a new realm, in a different realm, and it's so open that I need some kind of protection. And this is why I also do this ash. I put an ash on my body. And I know sometimes in the West, some people who don't know would think that I'm doing white face. I am not engaging in
Ah,
white face. I'm not doing white
wow.
face. And it's
Oh my
because people don't understand.
I see.
I think one of the dolls, one of the stuffed dolls, there's two girls that are, if you look at the dolls, it looks like they are wearing a costume made of sticks. It's kind of in the background there, somewhere in the background. They look like ghostly. They look almost like they're ghosts.
Yeah, it's
So
the one
this
with
was,
the sort of square in between them, right?
yeah.
It's that one.
So they look like ghosts, but this was part of the coming of age ceremony where the girls have to roam around the village, and they were called Oihanangolo, which means white things, because of the ash that they put on the body. And
Mm,
the idea was that they have to come to your homestead. They can come to anybody's homestead,
mm.
and they can demand, it doesn't matter if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, they can demand for you to cook for them a meal, and you have to wake up and you have to cook for them, and you have to feed them, because they were apparently imitating how men act in the community. Like men can apparently just come in
Ah,
4 o'clock in the morning and say, I want a
wow.
meal. This was the only time the young girls were allowed to pretend to be men. And
Mm,
of course, they
wow.
would
So this
carry,
like
yeah,
performance of
it's a
masculinity,
performance,
kind of
yeah.
working through what becoming a woman.
Yes. And then, of course, they were allowed to carry, in Southern Africa, we call them knobkiri, which are sticks with a knob at the top. And if they encounter a man, any kind of a man, a big man in the night, and they're walking around, roaming around, and there's a man, they had every right to beat him. They were allowed to beat the man as part of the initiation ceremony.
Wow.
And of course, and this is why they have like a horn, like even the hairstyle looks like little horns, which actually represent the homestead. Even the hairstyle
Mm,
was crafted to represent the traditional homestead, the hut,
mm.
the area where we make food, or the kitchen area, and the cows, especially the livestock, because it looks like horns. And of course, after this ceremony, they put on their traditional attire.
Yeah.
They are women, dignified women. They can
Mm,
go to a different part of Ovambo, and everybody will know this is a woman from Ukwanyama, from a different part of Ovambo, because just based on her hairstyle, they will know she's married. And then they start, taking care of their homestead, cultivating the land, giving birth to their children, and that's it. And that's it. They move on with their lives. But of course, now the Christian missionaries were just like, no,
mm.
you have to get rid of everything. We don't care about your traditional attire. I mean, the audacity of a Finnish missionary to come to northern part of Namibia and to tell the people that their traditional attire is pagan, and that they need to get rid of it, and that they need to put on a cotton dress because they wanted everybody to look the same, to be, like information in some weird, I don't know, like simple as possible. It's diabolical for me. I keep thinking about it a lot. The fact that I feel like the Finnish missionaries were so intimidated not only by the beauty, but I think by the complexities of how do these people make this traditional attire? How do they take seeds and ostrich egg shell beads? How do they shape them to make beads? And how do they take the shells and how do they adorn themselves to look so beautiful and to be so free, you know, because the women, they didn't put on like brass or whatever. Everybody was topless, but everybody was dignified. And, you know, we stretch our earlobes. In fact, a few years back, without even knowing that one day I would be doing this kind of work, I just started stretching my ears without knowing why, until I stepped into the Berlin Ethnological Museum and actually found a pair of traditional earrings that were carved from wood. And it was, for the first time in my life, it was confirmed that my ancestors used to stretch their earlobes. And I just also did it many, many years ago, way before I was doing this work. I have no idea why I was doing it. And in fact, I remember going to my village and there was a lady asking me, why are you stretching your ears? What is wrong with you? And then she even went like, this is not part of our culture. And for me,
Wow.
it was just, I don't know why I did it. I had no answers at that time why I was doing it, but there was just something just told me, you have to do it.
Hmm.
And today, as I'm sitting here, my lobes are also, I'm stretching or they've been stretched. And everything has been confirmed in the archives, even in the depot in Berlin. And that's where they keep a lot of our things, our traditional, the missionaries took a lot of the ivory buttons, the shells, some women's traditional hair, you know, like traditional, it's like extensions, but with a traditional hair still intact, which means they cut off the extensions. And this wig is in the Berlin Ethnological Museum. And they took a lot of our traditional fertility dolls, you know, that were supposed to be there to ensure the continuation of our clans and birthing and you know, raising children. And these were dolls that were used to teach children how to raise a child, because you have to give this doll a name so that by the time you are, you know, a woman that went through your initiation ceremony, you give this doll a name. You say this is Ndapewa, and one day you'd really give birth to Ndapewa in real life, you know, and you say this is Ndapewa because Ndapewa was already there with you as a doll, because you've been speaking to Ndapewa's spirit even before she became to be a human being, to be with you in real life. So of course, they also told us to get rid of the beautiful hairstyle that we used to adorn with the cowrie shells. And this is why you see a lot of the cowrie shells in the work, because it's a reference to these beautiful hairstyles for young women. And they used to put a lot of it in the hair. And then you smear it with a red ochre, a mixture of fat and red ochre, and you put it in the hair. So everything, you will be like glistening with traditional marula oil, and your skin is red with a red ochre. And the boys will just go like, wow, look at this young, beautiful Panyama young girls. This is the one I want to get married. And also, I realized also, whenever I wear my traditional attire, like the real traditional attire, not the one with the cotton dress or cotton fabric from Finland, because I also now started learning how to make the real traditional attire with the leather, and to treat the leather with the red ochre, and to wear the many ostrich eggshell beads, I realized that somehow the dress or the what are they called? The corset that we wear around the waist, the belt, everything is actually heavy. And I realized that it's actually also there to ground you.
Ha.
The copper beads that we wear around our ankles, everything is supposed it feels heavy because it's grounding. It's grounding you to the soil, to the ancestors, and you have to be to the roots, you know. And now I realize sometimes when I wear it and I move, I feel like, so it was also on purpose. And when the women are walking around in the community with all these adornments, it's so graceful. It's like, it's almost like looking at I don't even know what it is, like just this, I don't know, there's a word for it, you know, like very,
Yeah,
very
to me,
graceful.
it
And
sounds quite like majestic.
yeah, majestic and graceful, but she is grounded. You could see even because the corset, you have to, they also work on your posture, so you work like this and not like
Mm,
how I'm sitting now, but like very straight, and you are grounded and you are being pushed down to the earth to
mm.
connect to the ancestral realms as you are walking in this community.
And
And
that
I
sounds
I
like pride
realize,
to me as well.
yeah,
That actually like inhabiting those
yeah,
beautiful things and
yes,
incorporating them into the whole of the body and the community. That's like,
yes,
walk tall, be
yes,
proud of who you are
yes.
as as a woman, as a girl,
Mhm.
as a member of this family, as a member of this group. And I thought it was very, very powerful. It really kind of made me be curious, but far more than that, to want to,
Mhm.
really better understand that
Yes.
there's this insistence when these colonial missionaries arrive from Finland that
Mm.
this must stop
Yeah.
because it is
It was too powerful.
too
Yeah.
powerful,
It
too
was too
powerful.
powerful.
And it's
And
almost
they,
like a kind of not
yeah,
just a shock or a surprise, but
yeah,
a dehumanization where it's like
yeah.
this cannot be
Yeah, because my
because
question
it
is, what was the problem? Why couldn't
yeah.
you just come as a missionary to anywhere around the world?
Mhm,
If you want to convert the people, okay, convert the people,
mhm.
but leave them as they are in their
Yeah.
traditional attire. Why was it so difficult? But I think it's just because it was just too powerful, the way the people were looking, it was too dignified. How is this possible that these people, like, I mean, the adornment, you know, it's like, how is this even possible that there's people living like this? With their belief systems, if they believe in their version of God, because for us we call our God, the idea of God, Kalunga Kanangobe, you know, that's what we believe in. But of course, when we got converted, Nangobe fell away, and then Kalunga remained as now the Christian idea of what is God. Now we just say Kalunga, but for those that know, they always say Kalunga Kanangobe because that's the real our idea of God, or He's everywhere. He takes care of us, and we the idea that we also came from the rivers, and this is why we wear the shells, the oyster shells around our traditional attire. As you can see here, you know, we decorate everything that we wear. Got these shells, you know, and this is made. This is now from the cow hide, and this is part of the traditional attire, and it's um, we are people of the river, of the water, and we come from water. We come from the fact that there was even a ceremony where we would take the children when it's a full moon. And I love this. And maybe one day when I have kids, I will do this with if I ever have children, I will do this with my kid. Whenever we have a full moon, you take the child out of the hut and you point to the moon and you say Tarohani, which means look at the moon. There was
Ah,
something so magical whenever the moon was a full moon, that
mm,
my ancestors will have a ceremony to honor the moon,
mm,
to
mm,
worship the moon. And the
mm,
babies, it doesn't matter, 1 o'clock in the morning, take the babies and the children out of the hut,
mm,
point to the moon and say, look at the moon. And then we have to ask the moon for blessings.
Ah,
or you say thank you to the moon. And this is why with that we had that ceremony to connect the children to the moon.
mm.
And of course, the missionaries were like, no, that's
Yeah, no.
paganism. You have to get rid of that. And now today, uh, we have what is it? I like to call it. We have Nakambale now, the former Finnish missionary or mission station in Novambo. And I find it fascinating the fact that he is buried there in that
Yeah.
cemetery
Mm,
together with the kings and the queens of Ondonga. And the way he's buried, he is positioned to actually be still in conversation, in communion. He's still there in conversation with his church. That
mm.
church, I think you showed the picture with the picture of the church with a lot of people standing in front. Um, um,
This one?
the other one. Yeah, this one. So this church, I think go back again. Yes, this church. So this building is still there. So what you saw in the video of Black Sarah, this is the original building. It's still there. That's really just on this side, on the left side of the image, the missionary is buried there, and he's really still talking.
Mm,
He's still active with his church, in the spiritual realms. I guess everybody's still going to church. He's still doing his thing. But what I found fascinating about this building, about this mission station, I keep thinking about the memory of the building or itself,
yeah.
the many hands of my ancestors. They took the mud and they plaster it, and over the centuries, they repair it, they repair the roof, with the grass. And I always think about, what is the memory of the church itself? What does
Mm.
it remember?
This reminds me of your grandmother's hands.
Yes. So what is because when I was recording the video also, I was walking around the church, and I was also feeling the walls, the inside, and touching everything. And I was just thinking to myself, what does the soil remember? The mud that was used to
Yeah.
build this church.
Mm,
And then I look over at the cemetery, and I can see all the kings and the queens that are buried there. And then, of course, I also see Rautanen and his whole family are also there. And
mm,
when I'm in that space, I'm still thinking, yeah, of course, we might not see everybody now,
mm,
but they're all still just living their life. They're all still very active, like the ancestors and Rautanen, they're all going to church as usual.
mm.
In this realm, it's just a wind that you hear, but I'm just so fascinated that this building is still there. You can still step into it. You can still feel the energy. I mean,
It's not
yeah,
empty in a way.
even
It's not
even the
empty.
Makalani trees that grew there for centuries also remember. What is the memory of the Makalani tree, the
Yeah.
palm trees that are around the mission station?
Yeah.
And it's so
It seems
fascinating for me
right.
to.
It seems right to me because this
Mm,
image is such a provocative image of so many layers of past and present, of visible
yeah.
and invisible, and it connects so much to where you have gone with the
Mhm,
work that you have made, and then how you have transported fragments of this story, personal,
mhm,
architectural, the land, the people, which people, what kind of power. Your your work at St. James's is an extension of such a visceral, bodily, like flesh, spirit, earth, sky. It feels like one of the invitations, perhaps, is to recognize in some way, even in some, strange, uncanny way, what is
mhm.
lost
Yeah.
when a baby is no longer invited. Look, look, look.
Yes.
So thank
Yes.
you for encouraging us to look.
Mm,
And by way of drawing the conversation to a close, knowing
mm,
that um, knowing that every single one of these people that we can see in this photograph and so many more, every single one has a story, has
Yeah.
has a name, and the names themselves, as you say, would
Mm-hmm.
have been changed, contested, shortened,
Yes. Yeah.
shifted around. I want so much. This is something I kind of suggest as in this conversation, which I hope is one among many. We draw to a close. I wonder
Mm-hmm.
whether or not together here we can hold some silence for the
Mm-hmm.
ancestors, have a moment to give thanks, each in our own and different way, for these
Mm-hmm.
people near and far, living and departed, the past
Mm-hmm.
generations, the future generations, and what they have been through, who they are, and how you connect with them, and how
Mm-hmm.
you very, very generously have now, in some way, brought them all the way here across many, many miles and many different kinds of borders. So, what do you think?
Yeah.
Perhaps to just hold a bit of silence for this.
Mm, I think we can do that. Yeah. And it was very, very important for me to I really wanted this work to come to St. James's so that people can see the brutality of the Christian indoctrination. I mean, you can also see in the pictures how all of a sudden these people had they had their own belief systems, they had their own rules, their kings and queens. But then all of a sudden, these Christian missionaries come in and now they have to like bow down to them. Even the way they were photographed,
Yeah.
you could see the missionaries are standing in front, and in some images you could see there's this a sense of suffocation, because sometimes they're always there, either on the sides, on both sides of, of the, if you really look closely, there's always a kind of a white body
Yeah.
standing in the frame. I guess they're there like the shepherd, and the people
Mm,
are kind of depicted to look like sheep, and then they are there as controlling, forever present. It doesn't matter what picture it is. They are roaming, they're just there. Sometimes they try to hide themselves, but they are forever present,
mm,
rearranging how the people should stand. And all
mm,
of a sudden the people have to listen to these bodies, to these white bodies.
mm.
And for me and I think that's where, and for me, when I really look at these images, that's when you really get to see um the depth of these indoctrination, the fact that there's always someone there,
Yeah.
someone watching you, someone controlling you,
Mm,
someone telling you how you should behave, what you should say, your mannerism, how you should dress, how you should look like,
mm,
just because they were so scared to approach the people in their entire what is it in their true self,
mm,
because they were so afraid to come to the people as they are and to say, we want you to be as you are. Maybe we're going to indoctrinate you, but this thing of ripping them apart from within, it started from within, and then the outwardness of getting rid of the traditional attire and to rip everything out. And now we are just a shell of what we used to be as our Wambo people. And today we struggle. There's really a struggle.
mm,
Um, One side, people think they are Christians, but on the other side, there's an internal conflict, you
mm,
know,
mm,
um, and the fear of reconnecting to our ancestors.
mm.
So, yeah, I hope. And the crazy thing is, if you go to Finland, not many Finns believe in
Not many people
Christianity.
know,
So
right? Yeah, and
that's
are very secular.
yeah,
That's true. So
yeah.
it feels
So
like the heart of you started by talking about like trauma and labor right
yeah,
at the beginning, and that the heart of the core
mm,
of what you've spoken about and the work that you're doing that's now present for a time in this place where the I mean, to me, it sounds like, the deep horror of dehumanization, the audacity of questioning another human being or another group's dignity because of a lack of self-awareness about one's own, fear, injustice, the principles that that wildly incorrectly would justify any mode or method of oppression in any way, that truth is being brought into a different kind of light, a different form of considering. And my deep hope for each person who sees your work, who experiences it in services, in worship, in different resonances that it will bring out for people, each person with their background. There are people from Namibia who have come, who have been part of this, and some, each person's inner experience, some of which may be expressed and some of which not, some of which to me and some of which to others here or elsewhere, they would not have had that experience had you not generously offered your experience as a maker, as a human being, as someone who in many ways is recognizing what is at stake in revealing these people's moments and lives, but also these people's hearts. And so that's so precious and beyond words to me.
And
So
I just
thank
want to
you.
add, I know you ask also why the materials, the reason why I use this this lace material is because it reminded me of the altars in northern part of Namibia,
Oh yeah.
because it
Yeah.
was
It's like
the
a
altar was
colonial Christian
colonial
material.
Christian. It's always this lace fabric. Everything was white, but with this lace textured fabric. And I thought it would be, interesting to kind of use the same material
Yeah.
and to print the images on this. In fact, it's also funny that I also used the sport, like when I went to the printer told me it's actually a sports material that is actually used to make sports garments. And and I
So it's
thought
for like it's for
it's
sports and
perfect.
athletics as well
Yeah.
as for church and of course
Yes.
calorie shelter there as well.
Yeah.
So
So I
and
thought
the
it was
red
also
thread, wonderful.
interesting to also use a different kind of material but also add the lace and because if in most congregation in northern part of Namibia, this is really what they use. It's always a type of a material like that for the altar, and of course I also wanted to have my Madonna to look different, to have, because for us in northern part of Namibia, Madonna doesn't only have one child. Madonna have many children, and I thought it's nice to also have it that way. Just
Yeah.
um, yeah, with the
And it's
many Madonna
powerful, girl.
and her many children, and because for me that is my reality in northern part of Namibia, and also to include all these almost like it's almost like family photo. When you really look at it, it looks like a family photos and photo album, but it's also Madonna and her children actually that then so
Yeah.
yeah.
And that she becomes this mid 20th century photograph of this
Yes.
young Namibian woman,
Yes.
a divine mother,
A divine mother. Yes.
and a divine mother for many places, many times.
From many
And
places across
it's
Namibia. And I think she represents many faces of mothers, and also contemporary Namibia, many faces of mothers
Mm.
in Namibia right now.
Mm.
And of course, yeah, I just didn't want to do a typical Madonna and child image. I thought this represent also who we are today
I
as
am so
Namibian
glad.
women and Namibian mothers.
I am so glad you didn't create something typical, as you put it.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
holy
Mhm.
in this place because it tells a story differently, because it tells a
Mhm.
truth differently, which
Yeah.
I know is profoundly personal and
Mhm.
also has this deep resonance. I see the face
Mm.
of this person with the cowrie shell halos,
Yes.
and I think about the connection between the child and the moon. I think about the people of Mass. I
Mm.
think about fertility and all we've talked about. And as a
Yeah.
priest here, when I go back to this altar,
Mhm.
I give thanks for each of those people,
Mm.
and they are they are part of the reality of the energy of the presence of each person's infinite dignity. I think of their
Mm.
majesty. I think of their
Yeah.
majesty. So thank
Yeah.
you. And thank you for
Yes.
your time, for your
And sorry,
energy.
and the last part is just the
Sure.
dolls, because I know that was also a question. The dolls, the reason
Mhm.
why I took some of the people out and turned them into dolls is
Oh,
because
yeah.
I was thinking about how during colonial times, the congregation was not mixed. You could not come in your traditional attire. So I thought it was interesting to showcase how the people actually looked like during that time.
Mm,
Some people wear their traditional attire, some people wore their Sunday best.
yeah.
And you could see some were just, like especially the image of the two girls with the clay pots on the head. You can see they were photographed. One is wearing a dress, a cotton dress, and the other one was still in her traditional attire, which means it's like a kind of like documenting the transition from
Yeah.
being indoctrinated, being converted to Christianity. And of course, I also wanted to depict, or I wanted to show this, especially the images of the couples also, because a lot of the times in the archives, you hardly see pictures of Black love, of our
Mm,
ancestors in love. Are they photographed as a couple? And I thought, and I think this is why I have some of these images. I don't know where they're getting married. Is it couples that are getting married in the church? And so I wanted everybody to recreate a different kind of congregation where you have the chief is also there, the missionary is also there, girls in their traditional attire, they're all in one congregation. Even the topics that we don't like to talk about, how Black women look after these white
yeah.
babies all
Mm,
across Namibia. It's not only in northern part of Namibia, this laboring of Black women working as maids and taking care of Black babies and raising them. And this is why that is the biggest doll, because it's something that we hardly talk about, the fact that a lot of Black women nurtured and they raised, even in the images. I think there's one or two images also on the altar cloth where you could see a very young Ovambo girl looking after a little Finnish girl. And,
yeah.
so it's just, I wanted to create a kind of a congregation where you are really confronted with,
Yeah.
you
Well, and
know,
there's
yeah.
a an African girl with a white doll as well
Yes.
as this toy. So
Yeah.
I'm so struck by these individuals as well as these pairs.
Yes.
How family and how
Mhm.
aspects of what love does and what love does not look like, what liberation
Yes.
might look like, what
Hmm.
oppression might look like.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I really love this congregation with their lace and their shells and
Yes.
and that it's
Yeah.
everyone together so is so deeply moving. And we put them on the ledge in the church.
Yeah.
they're around,
Yes,
they're
yes,
interacting with each other, and yet they look out at us and ask
yes,
big
yes.
questions.
And thank you so much for putting the pasta, the I think there was one nice image on the
Mm-hmm.
table, how you arrange them also to have the pasta kind of like preaching to everyone. And
Yeah, I don't know.
I
We
think
can
it's,
maybe see it in that. No,
yes,
it's a bit tricky, but he's there. He's on the table
yeah, he's there.
and he's preaching to everyone. It's very
Yeah, it's
iconic.
kind of like preaching, and that's exactly how I imagine them to be arranged, so that it's
Mm,
also kind of preaching to everyone, and it's kind of like the missionaries, and yeah, because we were not allowed to come in wearing a traditional attire. You were not allowed to step into a church. So
mm,
that was now me kind of thinking about it, that in this congregation, everybody have to be together and kind of um, deal with this collective memory, because I mean, they're all connected when you really think about it.
mm.
They're all connected. Missionary or not missionary or Vambo, everybody's connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for connecting across these continents and across these times and places with us. I know that this is one of many conversations, and I can't wait for the next one. And I'm glad that so many people will see this exhibition
Mhm.
and will see your experience of it and hear your words as well. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Mm.